Picture. I'm Phil Arno. With the coronavirus taking over our lives, different groups react in different ways that reflect their experiences. If you're elderly or if you have a health problem that puts you at extreme risk, you may be reacting very differently than, say, a 20-something-year-old who's out to conquer the world and socializing constantly. But what if you're a young child and you have no point of reference to compare to in your life? You may be looking at adults that are nearby or the news on TV, maybe social media. Of all the groups of people who you can think of, children might be the most complicated when it comes to explaining this life experience. With me today on The Big Picture is clinical psychologist Dr. Rahabi-Vigna, I think I got that right.
Yes.
She works with young people up to the age of 24, and you've been practicing for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Why don't we talk a little bit about dealing with children when explaining this and how children are reacting. What are you hearing in your practice? I know it's just recently, but what are you hearing about how children are coping with this?
Okay, well, being that this is the first week that schools are out, children are home, I'm hearing children very concerned about their daily routines. They are unsure about what they should be doing. Should they be reading? Should they be playing as much as possible? And they're very much paying attention to what the adults in their lives are doing and saying, whether they're coming and going. So they're pretty much a little bit on edge right now, wondering what they could be doing next.
And you know, there's so many different aspects to this. I mean, there's the social, there's the education, there's, like you say, the family atmosphere, looking at what the adults are thinking and doing. If you're an adult, if you're a parent in a family with young children, and suddenly it's not like a snow day, which you know is going to be over soon, there's no real answer as to how long this is going to go on and where it's going to continue. I mean, some school districts aren't sure whether they're going to reopen for the year. And so there's interruption of education and there's social interruption. How do you, as an adult, take control and explain this to the kids and maybe make it sound normal?
Okay. I have been suggesting that families sit down with their children and hold a family meeting of sorts and show them the calendar. Show them how many days we have until April 30th. So far, children know that they will definitely not be going back to school until April 30th. They love to look at the calendar, count down the days, cross out the days with a red marker, and then after they count down the days, we can then all get a plain piece of paper and start to jot down a general schedule for the day. So keeping kids on a routine and allowing them to be part of scheduling their routine all the way from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. would be a fabulous idea. Kids want to know what is going to happen during their day. They do not structure well on their own, so offering them some structure while also allowing some playtime will be a wonderful way to ease their worries and let them know that this is what we have in front of us right now. We have many days until April 30th. If the schools decide to stay closed longer, then we can revisit that once again on April 30th. But I think that parents should sit their kids down, talk about a schedule, and definitely have them count down the days and be a participant in writing down their own schedule for the day or for the week.
Well, as with any group, there's various different personalities, and same thing with children. Some children are, they think this is the greatest thing because they don't have to go to school. Some are going to be bored out of their minds because suddenly they realize they're not in school, but they also can't socialize. They're not seeing their friends. Is there a common thread? The different personalities cross all lines, but is there a common thread with kids that you need to be aware of that may not really show on the surface of it, but in the back of their minds, they really have in common? You may have touched on that,
Yeah.
but again...
Yeah. Many kids are worried about their own activities that have been canceled. Mm-hmm. When will soccer resume? When will swimming resume? When will we be able to start going to the grocery store together? Kids are very upset about activities that have been canceled that they look forward to. So that is the common thread that I'm seeing amongst school-age children, high school children, and even young adults. School-age children up till age 18 will indeed have schoolwork to do over the next few weeks. And all the schools have emailed all the parents with lists of schoolwork that they have to do. I am going to suggest that parents sit their children down and review a handful of emails with their kids and show them some of the homework that is coming home online for their kids. The schools right now are exercising a first ever idea called distance learning, at-home learning. They're using a Google document to send home homework, and children are going to be expected to do an hour or a couple hours of schoolwork a day in order to still complete the work that's necessary to finish their grade.
I know this is tough on parents as well because you're not used to having kids home constantly. Mm-hmm. It's not summer vacation. This is very unusual. Parents, again, they're like any other group. They react differently, and depending on personalities, it could be very frustrating for parents. It could be they could be short-tempered. They could adapt an attitude where they're trying to guide the students or the children into an attitude where it's not a big deal, don't be afraid. Would it be advisable for a parent to minimize the seriousness of this or to try to make it understandable that this is serious, but there are limitations as to how seriously you should take it? I mean, I'm not quite sure if there's a good universal way to address this with kids.
Right. I do not suggest that children be informed of all the statistics. I think that keeping it really, really simple, telling kids that there is a virus going around the country, it's spread around other countries, and now it is traveling around our country. So we need to be cognizant and informed of how to stay safe and basically germ-free. So use simple language with the kids. Yes, I believe we can tell them that there's a dangerous virus going around town. Therefore, we have been advised to stay home and limit our contact with friends, peers, even neighbors. But all the while, we do not need to tell the children all the statistics. The numbers is something that they will not understand. Now, that is school-age children. College-age kids, young adults, it's okay if they watch some of the news every day. They are going to get information from their cell phones. Unfortunately, sometimes too much. But as long as we keep letting our children know that we are all home together, we are going to be safe as well as we can, the hospitals and the medical professionals are there to help us if we do get sick, and we are going to rely on them. There are many, many government officials right now that are taking measures to keep us safe and emphasizing the safety to children a couple of times a day. It does not need to be spoken about all day, would be sufficient.
Well, we don't want to encourage phobias going into the future. We don't want children to be overly cautious when it comes to health and diseases and germs and so on. Right. That's not productive. You know, we don't want people to overreact. And a good sense of humor. I mean, as people who watch this show know, I should have my head examined most of the time, because the sense of humor is always the key to getting through difficult situations. That being said, you don't want to minimize the seriousness of it, but it should be a good combination, I would imagine, of putting their minds at ease and then just saying, you know what, there are precautions that you need to take. You guys are not going to be affected heavily, because the disease doesn't really hurt young people as far as we know that much, but we have to be protective of grandma and grandpa and all the people who are at risk.
Right. And I have found thus far that kids are worried about their grandma and grandpa, because they've heard that people ages 60 and over need to be careful. And a lot of families have restricted their grandmas and grandpas from visiting during this time. Talking to grandma and grandpa over the phone and FaceTiming grandma and grandpa will definitely help ease their worries. I'd like to mention, and just on an aside, that most of the kids will really not develop phobias of viruses because of this one pandemic. It's only a very, very small fraction of children who do have some anxiety regarding medical illnesses. These are kids that have been expressing worries about germs, the flu, I got a little cut on my hand, my leg is hurting me. It's a very small fraction of kids that have those worries.
Are those kids?
Those are the ones that might get particularly upset by this.
Okay, and that raises a question, and we only have a minute left in this segment, so very briefly, are those kids taking cues from adults, or is that something that develops within a child basically from other elements? Or is it the adults around who are overly cautious that are giving the cues to those children?
Okay, some of those children do have adults that are overly cautious, but some of those children who already have an underlying anxiety disorder are really the only ones we need to worry about that would take the news of this virus really hard.
Well, and what we need to do is we need to make sure that this situation, which is going to be a temporary situation, we know it will pass, doesn't have permanent damage inflicted on our young people.
I do not
going
believe
forward.
that it'll have permanent damage.
That's
In Buffalo, we are very lucky right now that we've had mild weather. Right. And lots of families are taking advantage of taking their children outside daily, sometimes every other hour. Families are bundling up and going out, and they're having a wonderful time with their pets or even the neighbors' pets, and they're really taking advantage of this mild weather.
And that's one of the advantages.
I consider our town really, really lucky this week and for the next few weeks forward. The fact that families can get outside is going to help us make it through this terrible time.
And you know what? That encourages families to be more together, and that from an Italian to an Italian, that's the heritage that we like.
Absolutely.
Family unity. So all right, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back. This is a fascinating conversation, because you're not gonna hear this anywhere else, and most of us know young children or have young children in our family, and we interact with the elderly, and it's all very pertinent. So stay tuned, and we'll come back right after this with more interesting facts and discussion.